these low-tech restoration and conservation techniques used at sites that our speakers are going to touch on today. And we're hoping to have as much time as possible for questions. So if you do have a question during any of the presentations, please put them in the chat and our team will keep track of them. We'll ask 1 or 2 questions between each of the speakers and have a more fulsome discussion period for the last portion of today's session. So here's the slate of great speakers that we've got for you today. You'll be hearing from them in 3 presentations. We've got Chelton VanGeloven, who will be speaking to a demonstration project in the Chilako. Ian Sharpe and Cindy Verbeek will be presenting together on the Bulkley-Morice Sustainability Initiative. And finally, we're going to hear from Emily Pearson and Laura Volgese from the Foodlands Corridor. And as I said, it's a full agenda, but we welcome your questions directly into the chat and we'll field them to our presenters. But first, we're going to take some time to set the stage with some comments from Zita Botello, who is the Director of Watersheds BC and co-director of the Healthy Watershed Initiative. So Zita, I'll move through the slides for you and over to you.
Thanks, Claire. Can everyone hear me okay? All good? Great. It's really wonderful to be with you here today. I'm excited about the prospect of a greater community learning more about these projects. Myself and other members of the Healthy Watersheds team have had the privilege to see some of this work on the ground, and it is truly remarkable. And so this discussion is really important today to share those learnings and the challenges along the way. So Leanne Sexsmith is on the call today, and so is Cheyenne from the Watersheds, or from the Healthy Watersheds team at the Real Estate Foundation, and Darshana as well, who is supporting us with this call today. So next slide, please, Claire. So many of you probably know the backstory and the history of the Healthy Watersheds Initiative, but we'll just revisit the fact that this initiative was spearheaded by, or catalyzed rather, by some COVID relief funding from the provincial government. It was $27 million and led by the Real Estate Foundation in partnership and supported by Watersheds BC, and with some other clear folks who supported this really incredible body of work, including our Indigenous Leadership Circle, the Board of Governors from the Real Estate Foundation, and working closely with the province of BC through our steering committee. So this work supported 61 projects all across the province, doing a variety of work. And we're going to hear a little bit more specifics about that today. So next slide, please. So I want to flag some of the restoration outcomes that will be of particular interest to participants here today. There will be an final outcomes and impact report that will be released shortly that has been led by Leanne and Cheyenne, the comms manager from the Real Estate Foundation. It's really quite an incredible and beautiful piece of work. And what has populated a lot of the information in this is work that's been done by the projects. And some of you are on the call, or many of you are on the call today. But the numbers are really quite incredible in terms of the amount of square hectares that have been restored, the species that have been supported through this restoration work. So next slide, please, Claire. So again, here are a few more data highlights from the work. What's really key, and I think top of mind for many British Columbians, is how all of this restoration work is supporting both climate change adaptation and resiliency in communities around the province. So the report, we receiving that fairly soon, and Leanne and Cheyenne might have more timelines they can share with you later. Next slide, please, Claire. So one of the things that's really relevant to our conversation today is work around, or just the fact that this work supports economic development. As you know, this was COVID stimulus money. A big focus of the money was getting people back to work and having people work in safe ways during COVID. And when some of the initial research was happening, we found that there was very little data in the BC context about what the watershed economy looked like. This report was catalyzed by the BC Freshwater Initiative, Watersheds BC, and Polis, and some other actors supported by the Delphi group. Some of you may have seen it. But what's really interesting here is the economic benefit of this work. Many of you who work in the sector know that there has not been an investment in this sector in a long time. Part of what is so relevant of the discussion today is the learning that was able to happen in the different types of restoration technique. Because the investment hasn't happened there, there is a real dearth of both capacity and expertise and experience in the province of BC. Many times we have to bring people in from the south of the border or from other areas. So it's very exciting to be able to dig in a bit more and to share the learnings from this work and be able to show how critical it is, not only to ecological, social benefits to communities, but also to economic health, and that there is employment and training opportunities that really need to support the expansion of this work. Next slide, Claire. So that's all I have to say about some of the background. And without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker, who is a great example of the work that's been done in the Chilako region. So Chelton is a source water protection hydrologist with the BC Ministry of Forests. He's been involved in restoration work all over the Peace River and beyond. We're really excited to hear from him today and the work that's been done through the Chilako River Demonstration Project. And this project in particular is really wonderfully demonstrative of the partnership approach and the shared learnings and techniques that happened in the context of the project. So with that, I look forward to seeing Chelton's images and hearing from him. Take it away, Chelton. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Let me just get the screen share going here. There we are. You guys are seeing that. Get this set where I need it. There we are.
Oh, Shelton, I'm not sure that we're seeing your screen just yet.
Okay, are you seeing it now?
No.
Oh. Yes, no, maybe so.
No.
Still not, sorry.
Okay, let me just try this again here. Share screen. Screen two.
Okay, looking good.
Now we're good? Excellent. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Chelton VanGeloven, the source water protection hydrologist with the Ministry of Forests for the North area of British Columbia. I respectfully acknowledge that I and my family live, work, and play within the ancestral territory of the Bulkley-Morice, and that is where I am standing today. My topic today is the criterion for a successful restoration project, with a slight focus on monitoring and evaluating restoration. So the Chilako River is a tributary of the Chilako River. It flows through the Chilako Plateau. The name Chilako comes from the Dakel name Salako, meaning the river in the hands of the beaver, or the Beaver Hand River. This is a photo of our restoration crew in March of 2022. I have really come to appreciate the talent and the dedication this crew brings to a watershed. Okay, we have some project statistics. From December 2020 to March 3rd, or March 31st, 2022, we've gotten 7 kilometers of river corridors established. Our budget was about 1.5 million, shared between the Healthy Watershed Initiative and the Nature Legacy Fund of Canada. Over 16,000 hours of Bulkley-Morice fish technician time was spent during the project. Nearly 3 kilometers of eroding stream bank along pasture land treated with organic bank protection and soil bioengineering. We managed to convert over 5 hectares of pasture adjacent to protected banks into a hydraulically rough floodplain vegetation complex. We did 3,200 square meters of live gravel bar staking. So this is just planting willows for the next inside the channel. 2 kilometers of fencing installed, trying to protect our investment from grazing. We irrigated 10 separate sites. 2 kilometers of abandoned side channel rearing habitat was reactivated. This was kind of a new one for us. We did demonstration projects with 7 different landowners. We've got extensive drone imagery at several times throughout the project and following seasons. And this fall, the restoration crew completed an extensive monitoring exercise where we used the drone imagery as a base, and then the crew evaluated the work completed in the previous 2 years and created a comprehensive photo essay annotated with measurement data and their own interpretation. So I can't stress enough, as Zita pointed out, how a demonstration project of this scale is a function of partners. Several people and organizations all need to be in alignment and working towards a common goal. News and UFFCA are my primary NGO partners. They've been arm in arm with me from the very beginning. Fisheries and Oceans Canada has been a funding partner from the beginning. Bulkley-Morice and SICAs are my First Nation partners on this project. UNBC and CNC, those are my research partners, so the college and the University in Prince George. Ministry of Forest pays my salary and keeps fuel in my truck. That's really important. PC Environmental is my on-site project coach. Mike Miles is a fluvial geomorphologist and my primary science advisor. The Sitka Foundation, they've been a key supporter that has enabled some of my more elaborate drone technology, which I really depend on. CERN BC has been instrumental in assisting our team with planning and understanding the dynamics of the Chilako watershed and providing the funding so that we can sort of get ahead of the curve and just understand. Regional District has been a funding partner, and our local rep has been a communication lead with the rural area. Watersheds BC and Real Estate Foundation have been a partner over the past 2 years. I also have some industrial partners, Dunkley Lumber, Canfor, SA Energy. They have all been instrumental in making certain things appear when I needed them, and I'm very thankful for that. Lee Hesketh has come to our site and helped develop prescriptions and strategies that would be effective on the banks of the Chilako. And then our original teacher for soil bioengineering education came from Dave Polster. So I'll read this slide. Evaluating success requires defining clear objectives. So you got to recognize that the watershed recovery is partially dependent on rates of natural processes such as vegetation growth and sediment transport. There's factors extrinsic to the watershed that can affect measures of restoration success. Things such as the big bar landslide, climate events, ocean survival. Like these things affect the things you're looking at, and you might not have any power over those. Instant gratification, you should not expect that. However, with time, restoration of natural processes and the long-term benefits of a functioning corridor, that will occur. Socioeconomic benefits must be considered. I can't stress this enough. Local employment, building local capacity, but broad scale engagement. You've got to learn from everywhere you can learn from. And successful demonstration products will entice other landowners to participate in stream restoration activities. So when we look at the Chilako River, the overlying problem is the lack of the vegetated corridor. Impaired channel and valley flat conditions existed in 1946, as we can see in the top photo. It's become much worse by 2018. The area between the 2 blue lines, so I'll use my laser pen here. The area between these lines, that's the extent of the active floodplain in both 2018 and 2020. It would be desirable to reestablish vegetation between the 2 boundaries. Failing that, simply providing some bank vegetation slows the rate of channel shifting and provides a diversity of stream and floodplain habitat. So you need to understand what is going on in the watershed. And the Interior Watershed Assessment Procedure Report Card, it attempts to do this. So in a forested environment, a measurable percentage of rain and snow is intercepted by the forest canopy and never reaches evaporation sublimation. There's more snow in a clear cut than there is in a forest. But you walk in a forest, there's more snow in the forest late in spring than the clear cuts don't have snow. The equivalent clear cut area index, it attempts to scale both the adverse hydrological effects of removing the forest canopy while acknowledging that the contribution that a regenerating stand has on the hydrologic cycle. So forest disturbance in the Chilako, steadily increasing trend. That's what I've got in the red box here. So the ECA of 44% over the entire watershed suggests that the balance between forest harvesting, wildfire, agriculture clearing, insect epidemics, and regeneration of a managed stand is the hydrologic equivalent of 44% of the watershed being clear cut today. The table suggests that we may have crossed the management threshold for forest disturbance somewhere around 2001. Okay, so this is an image of one of our main project sites. So the long profile reflects areas of historic channel shifting and cutoffs associated with the removal of valley flat vegetation. So all that means is I drew a line, I followed the stream all the way along here. I've got a digital elevation model. And what you see is that this section of the river all the way through here is much steeper than this section of the river here. So in our demonstration, we've generally protected the left bank. So we've protected the top bank, the river left to right. And we focused generally on the left bank and allowed the right bank to continue to shift. So as the riparian vegetation becomes established, channel shifting is expected to eventually result in a more uniform profile. So rather than have the steep and then gentle, the idea is that the river will shift and it will more or less find the same slope throughout the area. Reactivating historic side channels has facilitated the redistribution of water across the floodplain. And in partnership with beavers, have locally raised the water table by up to 1.5 meters. We expect ecosystem benefits associated with a restored river corridor to evolve and improve over time. So aerial imagery is probably one of the best tools for monitoring. Historic air photos are required to document ongoing channel changes and identify appropriate remedial measures. Satellite and drone imagery should be used to document present conditions and monitor the success of remedial measures. There's real value in acquiring imagery at the right times. For example, capture it during high water, low water, etc. You just learn so much when you capture your site with imagery, and then you can go back, you can look at it. You might see something another day that you didn't see the first. Here's the same site looking at it again. So this is late summer low flow, 4 months after restoration. So we were working on this site in March of 2022. This is August of 2022. Drone imagery offers really quick feedback to understand what went well and where to improve. In this photo, we can see the willows growing on the treated bank up here. We've got green leaves on the live gravel bar staking all throughout here. We can also see where the beaver's taken over a reactivated side channel and raised the water table for several hundred meters across the floodplain. So right here, we've got a new beaver dam that came in as soon as the flood was over, and he's backing water up all the way to about here. So that's interesting to me. You don't have to have a drone. A handheld camera is also a really good tool to monitor the success of restoration strategies over time. If you're using a camera to look at things, it's important to keep track of the date and take photos from the same location. Consider marking the location you take the photo with a painted concrete brick or some sort of monument. It's really good to make a map and number the photo locations. So we look at this photo here. We captured that in July of 2021. Imagine seeing a photo from this exact same spot, next year, and then 2 years after that, and 2 years after that. Taking the time to keep that, it provides a point of reference, and it gives people the opportunity to detect change and they can detect their own change just by looking at it. And I can't stress enough, you've got to take the time to record relevant details. You got to crouch low. You got to get into the weeds sometimes. In this photo, we see cottonwood germination in the sediment deposited during the spring freshet. Diversity of floodplain vegetation that comes back almost instantly is remarkable. All you have to do is create the right conditions for nature to happen. This photo is sort of at the toe of one of our organic bank treatment and soil bioengineering, or organic bank protection and soil bioengineering treatments. There are immediate benefits from submerged wood, including providing habitat that is suitable for juvenile rearing, substrates, it creates a substrate that filamentous algae can grow on, and so on. Having organic carbon in the stream channel is an important building block for the food chain. And when we do monitoring, there's minnows all around. Anywhere we've got a willow or a branch in the water, we've got a pile of minnows chasing it. So the real corridor width should be the width of the floodplain, but we will take as much of the valley flat as we can get. So the yellow polygons depict locations of organic bank protection, soil bioengineering, and conversion of pasture to floodplain vegetation. So, the irony doesn't escape me that I was in a helicopter taking a photo of this site during the flood of 2020 and, was restoring the banks on it the following winter. Again, it's good to have photos at the right time. So we also need to look for some of the species that really benefit from restored habitat. Reach lengths of sod clumps falling off of eroding banks aren't the best conditions for rearing Chinook. It's really exciting to restore riparian ecosystems along the entire reef breaks, then turn up a juvenile Chinook in your project sites, as I've done in this photo, or as the crew did. But we look at fish, salmon are really important to look at, but we also need to focus on more than high profile species such as salmon. For example, the Western pearl shell mussels used to play an important role in salmon life cycle by maintaining water quality and stream bed stability. We see remnants of these pearl shell mussels in the stream, and we need to pay attention to how they respond to an improved habitat in the river corridor. So here's just kind of an overview shot of the Chilako River, relative to watersheds around it. The Chilako River is, this is the upper Chilako here. Down below is the Blackwater and the Piseco. Over here is the upper Fraser. This is the Willow. This is the Chilako. So the low number of spawners relative to neighboring watersheds is an indicator of impaired habitat. However, the use of indicators, spawning or holding, may not be a reliable indicator of project success. So, due to lag times, extrinsic factors such as the big bar slide, you don't want to rely on Chinook spawning as an indicator of your success immediately. But over time, it would sure be nice to see a lot more dots on this river. So this is my final slide. This is an initial assessment of our work. With time, we expect to see improvement on all criterion. So thank you, and I open the floor for any questions.
Thank you so much, Chelton. That's amazing to see all of this practical information here. I have a lot of questions, but I think I'm going to need to hold them until the end. And folks, just a reminder, if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. And again, Chelton, thank you so much for this really practical information, and to give us some of those principles that you guys are using up in your work. I think to get us back on schedule, we are going to move on to the next presentation. So thanks again, Chelton, and I'll ask you to stop screen share when you are able. And we'll have some more questions in the question period at the end. In the meantime, I'll flip it over to Ian to kind of pick up in the same or similar types of works that's happening. And I know that you and Chelton have crossed paths many times before. So Ian, please feel free to start sharing, and over to you.
Yeah, okay. Can everyone see the screen of our first slide?
Looks great.
Okay. And so Cindy Verbeek will be joining in. Cindy, is your mic working okay?
I just turned it on. So how's that?
Okay, good. I'm just going to take this out of here so I can see my own slides. Okay, good. So, well, Chelton, wonderful stuff. I'm so glad that we're following you, because you really have painted the picture of this kind of restoration very well. So without further ado, I'll just get into the two organizations that are here to present to you today. So first, the Morice Trust, and then Rocha Canada. So the Morice Trust is a purpose trust established in 2012 for the benefit of the Wet'suwet'en people. Our focus is watershed monitoring and management through a collaborative, long-term science-based program. We work on the unceded territory of the Wet'suwet'en Nation, and we acknowledge that this work would not be possible without the support and guidance of the Office of the Wet'suwet'en. That's the Hereditary Chiefs organization. And we appreciate and honor our relationship with the Wet'suwet'en and look forward to collaborating on future work on the land. The image on the right is Wet'suwet'en territory, and the inset shows where that territory fits within British Columbia. And so the area that we worked in, I'll show you the two watersheds that are of our interest in restoration. They're pretty much in the middle of, right smack dab in the middle of that Wet'suwet'en territory map there. Cindy.
Yeah, so Morice Watershed Monitoring Trust hired Rocha Canada to do the communications for the HWI work. Rocha is part of an international, so the project in Houston, we're part of an international family of Christian organizations that do conservation inspired by God's love. We engage in scientific research, environmental education, community-based conservation, and sustainable agriculture. So in Houston, it looks different depending on where you are in the world. But in Houston, that looks like a small coho hatchery on the Upper Bulkley or Little Bulkley watershed, and a nature center, which you can see behind me. There's some coho swimming around in there and some displays. And we have three aspects: research, conservation, and education for all ages. And yeah, so that's who Rocha, and we are place-based. So we focus on the, now I apologize to any Wet'suwet'en speaking people who are on this. I just learned the name for our Little Bulkley, and it's very exciting for me. So I'm going to try not to butcher the name. It's the Nedzikwa watershed, and we're very excited to be working here.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, getting into the goals and objectives of this restoration project. Excuse me. So our goal is a multi-year program of process-based watershed restoration. And of course, to have a multi-year program, we need to find the means by which to have continuity, and so that this goal is an ongoing major goal of the trust. And our objectives for the Healthy Watersheds Initiative work in 2021 was to conduct reach scale riparian and stream bank restoration in the Upper Bulkley. We also we're in the process of developing a long-term vision for process-based restoration in both the Upper Bulkley and the Morice basins. And if you look to the right at the map image there, you'll see that they're pretty much contiguous areas, those two basins, and they are in the Upper Skeena watershed. And so we also really want to key in on Indigenous participation, however we can get it to happen, and that includes last year a fair amount of training and employment. Our field crews were of Indigenous extraction, and then as Cindy described, our outreach and communication to build partnerships and collaboration is absolutely essential to the success of a long-term project. So Chelton talked about the the kinds of process-based work that he's doing, and our definition for low-tech process-based restoration comes from the Utah State University manual on the subject, and so you can see the three parts of it there. Of course, the manual describes it in more detail, but essentially it's using natural materials, working with the river processes, letting the river do most of the work, and returning to a desired state, which doesn't necessarily have to just be what it was like before contact. If you've got roads and railways in the way, you're not about to be able to expand the influence of the river beyond those corridors. So why the Upper Bulkley and the Morice? So the Pacific Salmon Foundation a few years ago wrote a report that stated that these areas had high land use impacts and high valued habitat. And of course, this was coupled with significant declines in salmon and watershed health. And so what we're doing is we're involving communities and technical expertise to provide restoration solutions that strike a balance between the people, and that's their land and water use, and nature, and this is through fish-friendly restoration designs. So ultimately, we're promoting a river corridor to provide increased aquatic resilience, pretty much the way Chelton described it. So the three keys to that for our project is to create the space for the river to move and reestablish prior processes, doing flood and bank protection through establishing roughness and riparian vegetation, and then planning to find opportunities to connect the floodplains to the channels, as Chelton described. So very busy slide here. You're looking at the Upper Bulkley photo in behind, and these are the 2021 project participants. And again, to echo Chelton's presentation, it is truly amazing how many people you have to bring together to make all of this work. On the project management side, I'll just mention a few of the people on this slide. Jeff Anderson was pivotal, as was Adam Wrench, in terms of the project management operationally. I did most of the proposal writing and initial concept for the project. On the outreach and education side, Cindy Verbeek and her employee Marjorie Lewin did a lot of that, along with Adam Wrench as a contractor. We had contractors that were helping us with creating the workforce and putting them into place. Some of our contractors were involved in effectiveness evaluation and training as well, and you can see those names there. And on the advisors and collaborators side of things, there were many and varied. There's Lee Hesketh again, BC Cattlemen's Association, Dave Wilford, Chelton in particular, and Matt Sackles from the province, and DFO was represented by Peter de Koning and Natalie Newman. We had a couple of UNBC advisors, and then we had some help with operational things with Woodmere Nursery and Skeena Knowledge Trust on the data management side. None of what we did could have happened without the cooperation of the landowners. And so I've mentioned Roger Groot, Martin Strimbold, Steve Wilson, and Adrienne Dixon, who were pivotal to the success of the project. So our site selection process was inclusive. It included a small team made up of people from Arosha, DFO, Morice Watershed Monitoring Trust, landowners, the province, and some others. And we identified sites that were structurally starved, no riparian vegetation, with unstable banks. So the photo in the background there, that is absolutely what's going on in the Upper Bulkley for a great deal of its length. And so you can see the oversteepened banks and no riparian vegetation there. So the 2021 goal was to create conditions for the river to spread out on the floodplain in flood, to start the process of reconnecting floodplain to the channel. And this is while minimizing bank erosion to protect the agricultural land behind. And it's worth mentioning, you know, creating the conditions for the river to do the work, it does take time. And I can't stress enough that the long range projects like this, they literally have to take place over decades. So we had multiple sites that were already points of concern for landowners. We did riparian planting at 4 sites and stream bank stabilization at 6. We used a deep planting method, the Watershed stinger, to get planting down to the water table. And this was key to survival in the first year. I'll show you some more slides on that in a minute. And the resloping of oversteep and erosional banks added roughness with some techniques, pegboarding, willow wattles, and riparian planting. And I'll get into that detail in a sec here. So on the planting side, we were fortunate to be able to get willow and cottonwood pretty much right adjacent to our sites. And Adam Wrench was the one who was basically procuring all of our planting stock. And you can see it, the planting stock being immersed in the water to get it ready to plant, and then transferring it to the sites, and then putting it in the ground on the lower left there. So the Watershed stinger, you can see in the upper left here that that Watershed stinger, it's a pipe that has a high pressure nozzle on the end of it. It's got a handle on the top, and it's got a hose that comes from a pump that's pumping water out of the river to the top of the stinger. So also beside that, you can see a willow stake, and it's about 9 feet tall. The stinger's about 7. The middle photo, there's the stinger basically just blasting its way into the fairly sandy soils in the upper Bulkley. And then on the lower right, you can see that stinger went 7 feet into the ground. And so that willow standing there, 9 foot tall, had about 2 feet above the ground once it was in place. On the resloping side, at the higher end of the technical side of things, there's an excavator there that's resloping the bank to about a 45-degree angle, eliminating the eroding bank and making it so that floodwaters at high flows can actually go up into the field and replenish the field with sediment. And then, so this aerial view, you can see the resloped bank there. And then the sod was replaced lower left there to help with the initial reestablishment of vegetated cover. So the pegboarding, so these are largely black spruce posts, and you can see the same excavator about to push one into the bank there. So these posts are easily 12 feet tall, if not longer, some of them, and they just get pushed straight down into the soils. And then you can see what's sticking out in the foreground in that left-hand photo. And then on the right, you can see the resloped bank in this pegboard fashion. And so, well, what are you going to do after that? Well, the thing after that then is to attach other wood to those pegboards. So the pegboard, the pegging itself provides some stream bank stability, but by laying down other logs and tying them to the pegs, that basically makes them so they're creating the roughness so that when the floodwaters do come, they're going to flow up and over, and actually the current will slow down there because of the roughness, and do much less damage to that bank. And so you can see the drone footage on the left and right. Both of those shots basically are just illustrating how pretty much the entire belly of that meander has been treated in this way. And then on the lower right there, you can see 2 of our field crew basically weaving willows among the pegs. So on the effectiveness monitoring side, I just thought I'd flash this up. In 2021, there was a heat dome everywhere in British Columbia. And so on the upper right there, you can see some chlorosis on one of the planted willows. The next one to the right is a conifer that was planted as a plug, so it couldn't actually get deep into the soils, and so it just fried. But the willows planted deeply into the water table have done very well. And you can see on the extreme right there that we excavated some of them. And indeed, there's fresh root growth there. And then in 2022, Adam Wrench, on contract to us, to the trust, did a bunch of observational work and basically at multiple flows. And his view was that we're well on our way to establishing riparian vegetation on all these sites. It should be noted that, a few willows isn't going to do the job. Essentially, what your end goal should be a riparian forest. So back to Cindy.
So I was involved in the outreach and education piece of this, and I'm not going to read this all out, but I just want to make a note that I really think that it's important when you're doing this work to be place-based and to involve the people who actually physically live in that place. We have in the Upper Bulkley, we've had some some contractors that are from outside of our watershed come in and do work, and then they leave, and then they basically leave us with whatever restoration work, whether it succeeds or fails. We get to deal with all of that, and we've seen that in this area. And I just really feel like it's important that you include the people who are on the land, who work the land, who live on the land, whose territory it is. I feel like the success rate is going to be a lot higher because we have local people like Roger Groot here. You can see him talking to the gentleman with the beard. He is a local rancher. He has been on this land, since settlers came. His family has ranched the land. Super important to be involved with the indigenous people who have been on the land longer than the settlers, and to involve people of all ages. We sort of focus on contractors and environmental practitioners, but in my bottom right, there's a mom and her son, and these water stingers are easy enough for them. And he was dangling off of it to help her push it down. And they just had really super fun time. We had BC Bulkley Valley Nature Kids out to do some planting for us. And those are the people that are on the land. They're going to see where the issues are. They're going to be able to flag if there's other work that needs to be done. This work is not finished. The outreach is still happening. And that's only happening because I physically live in Houston. We have the nature center, and people come in and they ask us about what the work was, and we can chat with them, people who actually physically live in this land, on this land. So I just wanted to highlight that as a super important aspect of this project, and really grateful that Morice Watershed reached out to us. Most of their folks are from Smithers. Yes, it's only 45 minutes away, but it's a whole different culture. It's a whole different ball game. And I think it was really important to have local people involved.
Thank you, Cindy. I couldn't agree more. I'm so glad that we've forged this partnership, and I look forward to a lot more. So in 2022, we weren't fortunate enough to get the same amount of funding that we had in 2021 with the Healthy Watersheds Initiative. And so basically we were back to spending Maurice Trust's annual money on that we have through an endowment to see if we could just keep the project alive, and specifically to continue with the effectiveness monitoring and some other things I'll go into in a bit of detail here. So on the effectiveness monitoring side, the drone video is so important, as Chelton described. Also ground-based photo and observations at various water levels, echoing Chelton again. Ultimately, the conclusion of the 2022 observations, the effectiveness monitoring work, was that the riparian staking growth is off to a good start. And there's high overall installation integrity after being fully engaged at high water this year. Although 2 sites did require some maintenance. I'll describe that in a sec. So we also did more spring live staking to further establish riparian vegetation at multiple locations. One of them was where another organization had just installed some cattle exclusion fencing. And so then now I'll just show you what happened with the maintenance on the 2 sites. So this is at the Dixon Farm property. So there was 2 meanders that we treated with the pegboarding and planting. And you can see on the left there that there's some undercutting that took place over what amounts to probably, I don't know, 4 to 6 meters of this entire meander. So quite a small pocket in the overall scheme of things. And so the fix was, you can see on the right that willow fascines were actually buried right down, you know, basically at the base of these pegs on the left-hand photo there. And then willow matting and wattles were used in a checkerboard and a cross-hatching pattern to further stabilize the bank over where the hole was. And then there was more live stake planting there as well. So looking to future work, we truly do believe in long-range restoration planning and all that entails. We have to use a lot of science to, and especially our effectiveness monitoring to inform the planning over the course of decades. We definitely need to continue to invite and achieve more partnerships and do more outreach. We need to expand the use of the process-based restoration toolbox. And if you go to that manual that I mentioned early in the talk, at the Utah State University low-tech process-based manual, it's I think it's over 200 pages, but it's just a wealth of information about what the toolbox is. And we will be at the same locations because you're basically with low-tech process-based work, you're really never done. There's always going to be things you can do in a low-tech way to improve what you've done before and move upstream and downstream. There's certainly some new locations. Some have already been chosen for the Bulkley-Morice. More will come with the long-range planning. And we need to further develop effectiveness evaluation as pretty much like what Chelton was describing in our data management system so that we can actually manage what we measure. And then our successes, the planting stock, the water jet stingers, our landowner involvement, the partnerships we forged, and the outreach, thanks to Cindy and her folks at Arosha, all tremendous successes. Our challenges, and probably everybody feels the same way, sustained funding is the prime challenge. Finding and employing planting labor force, especially if you're focused on an Indigenous labor force, continues to be a challenge. And needed authorizations, whether they're federal or provincial. You know, we were successful in the planting labor force and getting the authorizations done. I think much more could be done to streamline that. And that's it for the show.
Thanks so much, Ian and Cindy. That was really great to hear from both of you. Unfortunately, we are going to have to flip it over pretty quick to our next and final presentation from Emily and Laura, but thank you both so much for sharing, and we'll have some time at the end for questions. So Emily, I'll hand the control over to you and feel free to start screen sharing anytime.
Thank you, Claire. One moment, I'll just get my screen up here. I think this should be working.
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. Hi everybody. My name is Emily Pearson. I'm the Foodlands Coordinator at the Watershed Society of British Columbia, and I'm here today with my colleague Laura Volghese, who is the project consultant. We are both calling in today from the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. To those of you who are not very familiar with Watershed, the organization's mission is Watershed CPR, which is to connect, protect, and restore the Fraser watershed. Foodlands is a new program of Watershed, which started last year with 2 HWI funded sites on the Estuaries, Statlu, or Salmon River corridor. The goal of Foodlands is to restore and connect adjacent parcels of privately held land to form a natural corridor. And we use the term Foodlands to acknowledge a diversity of food harvesting systems, both from a Western farming and traditional hunting and gathering perspective. Through Foodlands, we work to develop a collective restoration vision by bringing together agricultural landholders, Indigenous rights holders, and environmental specialists. So as Ian, Cindy, and Chelton were saying in their presentations, collaboration is a really, really important piece of restoration work. And our projects wouldn't be possible without it. So here is a photo from the floodplain of one of the pilot sites that we did before we did any restoration work. Here we did some bank stabilization and riparian planting and off-channel creation. The Sta'ashwam Statlu is the Hunkaminam name for the Salmon River, which is a tributary of the Fraser River. It is located in Langley in the shared territory of the Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo, and Matsqui nations. On this project, we are working in collaboration with CM Kwantlen, which is the business subsidiary of the Kwantlen First Nation, Langley Environmental Partners Society, Carewood Lidal, Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance, and multiple landholders along the river. Here is a map which shows the stretch of the Ashwam Statlu corridor where we are doing our work. The blue dots show where we plan to do future sites and more outreach, and the green dots show the completed sites that we've done. You can note here on the map, it really shows the extent of riparian area that's been cleared for agricultural use throughout this stretch of the corridor. What you can't really see from this overhead map is that there's quite a lot of bank erosion and some access challenges on some of the sites, particularly on the right side of the river there. Work here started in September 2021, and we have currently completed 6 of 16 potential restoration sites within the corridor. At the beginning and throughout the research and development of the restoration projects, we have consulted with Kwantlen and Katzie knowledge holders to learn the Halkamilam and Hunkaminam names for species and places, and to identify culturally significant plants to include in the restoration work. In the beginning, we did walkabouts and species surveys with knowledge holders and other restoration and stewardship experts in the area, as well as the landholders, which really allows you to take your cues from nature. So some questions to think about when you're doing surveys is what is already thriving and established in the area, what species used to thrive in the area, and what are the ecological and cultural values of certain plant species and the benefits that the area would experience if they were to be reintroduced. So one example of a low-tech approach to habitat restoration is being really specific with your choice of plants. For example, the Ashwim Stotlu experiences quite a bit of flooding. And like the sites that we did were all basically underwater last week during the November floods. Last year during the November floods in 2021. And so the choice of flood adapted plants is really, really important here. Some species include cottonwood, hardhack, red osier dogwood, willow, black twinberry, black hawthorn, and more. The commonality among these species is that they all hold water really well. They develop stabilizing root structures, and they're very fast growing, which allows them to quickly shade out reed canary grass and other invasive plants in the riparian zone, and also provide thermal regulation for the river and off-channel habitats. Some of these plants also provide food and medicinal use for people and wildlife. For example, black hawthorn is traditionally used as a heart medicine for local First Nations. And by choosing a diversity of plants, it can enhance biodiversity throughout the restored site, including for terrestrial and avian species in areas that have been traditionally cleared for agricultural use. Over to Lara.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everybody. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the successes and challenges. Working down in Langley here in the Lower Fraser, we don't necessarily have just the parcels are quite small that we're working on. So we don't have access to willow whips or dogwood whips or cottonwood poles like you would if you're in more rural, kind of more remote areas with larger parcels. Forest, and so we had to go, and because of the tight timelines with HWI construction timelines last year, we had to actually go and offsite and hand harvest 4,000 live willow and dogwood stakes and cottonwood poles, and which meant that we needed to propagate, get those starting to root throughout the summer, which was the drought months. So you can imagine that was a bit of a challenge. So this is on our executive director's farm. Luckily, she built some boxes so that we could, she could keep them maintained. So that was a bit of a challenge. So they all went in, obviously, in the fall after we had done our construction, and we had extremely good success with the willows. The dogwoods were kind of second in line, and the cottonwood poles did not fare too well, but we had about 15% survive. So yeah, that would be, I would suggest that being able to be in and around when you're doing your restoration work, like what Ian said, to be able to just harvest directly from the site, or if you are off site, to be able to harvest at the right time of the year, to be able to basically transport and put them directly into the ground. Next slide, please, Emily. And beaver caging. So quite a few beavers along the stretch of the river. What we did find was that they didn't like the red osier dogwood, so that was kind of handy. We could strategically place our stakes within the riparian area so that our caging was, we had like a buffer of dogwood, and sections, zones of willow where we could do our caging there and move away from the top of bank, and just plant majority of dogwoods. But you can see the bottom right photo. That is kind of what it looked like after the waters receded. So a lot of debris catching in the cages, which we had our effectiveness monitoring, we had probably 95 or 96% success rate in all of the stakes that we put in. So we're really happy about that. But it is definitely one thing to think about. It's I didn't see a lot of caging in some of the slides up north, and so that's very fortunate for you. But down here, they're very active beavers all throughout this reach of the river. So we don't have too much choice but to do caging on trees and the willows. Next slide, please. Livestock fencing. That's me with the goats trying to get underneath the fencing that we installed. Those are some of our cottonwood poles there. Definitely probably one of the, I don't know if it's not necessarily low cost. It depends on the material that you use, I suppose, but definitely one way to ensure that whatever portions of the riparian zone is intact, it's vegetated, is keeping livestock out of that area. If we didn't have, this is the right-hand photo there is a bank stabilization section we did on this property. And honestly, the livestock would have decimated these plants within seconds if we didn't have it up. We had, during the atmospheric rivers last November, that stretch of fence there actually got wiped out. It was more of a kind of poorish construction issue versus anything else. But what it did mean was that we, the livestock were out and did a little bit of grazing because we couldn't get back in there to put the fence up. But so yeah, livestock fencing, exclusion fencing is probably a really good way to protect the riparian zones. Next slide, please. This is yeah, large woody debris and driving in posts and using logs and brush bundles. We had this landholder had basically a vertical eroding bank. It had, he was losing about a foot of land a year. Where we chose to do this bank stabilization work was a reach of the river that experiences extreme flows and velocities and logs and things being, coming down the river. And so we ended up installing huge logs and root wads. We didn't have, again, one of these situations, we had to purchase our posts and drive them in. Again, if we were in another area where there was fallen logs or there was a wood lot available for us to be able to just tree fall and pound posts in directly from the site, it would be more cost effective, a little bit, I don't know if it's more low tech, but certainly having to haul in material drives up the costs a little bit, but much of the same concept is work that Chelton and Ian are doing. And then we brought in, we did know suppliers locally, Christmas tree farms and those kinds of things that could, we could just basically take it off their hands, any of their debris that they weren't using, we could bring it into the site. So that was very helpful. But, one of the important things is to basically work with the river natural forces. And so we had positioned these root wads and stumps in to act as bumpers, basically from logs and other debris and the force of the river that was coming at this particular section on the bank. Putting in the posts and putting in weaving in cedar branches and tying logs to these posts. It's amazingly effective with the sediment redeposition into areas where there was none before. So we are building back the land here. So the effectiveness monitoring reports have been extremely positive, and it held up amazingly well. Other than that fencing, it held up amazingly well during, I think we had 3 atmospheric river events last year. So yeah, I think, Emily, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
No, you did great.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks everybody.
Yeah, that's all. And I think that we can move into questions, or I don't know if we want to just do directed to us or just do general questions now.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I think we'll open it up to general questions, but really appreciate all of those photos and to see all of the activity in the chat. There's some interesting conversations happening about cottonwoods in particular. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. Such great information, and obviously wish we had more time to hear from everyone, and really wish we could all be there on the sites to see the work. Adarshna, if you don't mind spotlighting our speakers, I think I'll start off with one of the questions directly from Ian, which was how can we build enough expertise in these methods and activities to match the need across the province? And Ian, I'll put that question back to you. What are your thoughts about that? Oh, you're just on mute, Ian.
We can learn by the school of hard knocks, but I don't recommend it to be the way that we learn across the province. And so, you know, we need to learn at multiple levels. We need to learn, you know, in terms of how to bring people together, you know, on the social side. We need people who are good at saying, okay, well, if we need to sustain provincial level ongoing planning and execution for this type of process-based restoration. And then there's the technical side that, you know, we've got Chelton. If we could clone Chelton, I don't know, we probably need, I don't know, 50 Cheltons maybe to, you know, match the need of the province. There's Lee Hesketh with the Cattlemen's Association. There's probably a handful of practitioners in the province that at this moment could basically start writing prescriptions for, you know, the folks who are less schooled in what works and what doesn't. You know, there was this brilliant DFO and Pacific Salmon Foundation workshop just a couple of weeks ago on process-based restoration, and they brought up folks from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Forest Service, and these folks are, you know, they've been doing it not for decades, but since 2014, 2012 kind of thing, and they've learned a lot. But you know, I'd really love it if there was a way for us to do some kind of certificate that to get the ball rolling sort of at the mid-technical level, and then clone Chelton. That's all I can think of.
Do any of the other, oh, sorry, Chelton, go ahead.
Yeah, Ian, I was just saying that. Thanks for all the kudos. You don't need more of me. Anyone that works close to me doesn't want that. One of the things I observed in answering your question, everyone's sort of using the same formula. We're all working together. We're using as many people as we can. You know, we're changing the shapes of the banks a little bit because something's changed in the headwaters. You know, I'm flogging a dead horse here. Like monitoring is so important. From the watershed restoration days, like 30 years ago or 25 years ago, it's so hard to learn anything from all the money and investment that was put into it. And it's really, really difficult to learn from, because you know, we didn't have good monitoring and it wasn't really archived. And there's a few folks around, and they worked really hard, then they got the rug pulled, and you know, there's a lot of hard feelings. So if there's one thing we could really, really try to do is archiving this information we're learning, because I learned a lot today. Like, you know, like a lot. Ian, I really learned a lot from your project, like just from the, just from looking at it from through your eyes and how you guys showed the photos. That meant a lot to me. Emily and Lara, I learned a lot about yours. And it's just exciting to see how in slightly different approaches, different parts of the province, like you got different growing conditions. I like to work in the winter. For me, it's great. I don't have to soak my willows in the winter. It's, there's advantages and stuff like that. However, if even if funding will ebb and flow, but if we could just like keep the knowledge base together, and like by doing things with communities in the local part, like it's real. Like you'd be amazed where partners start to show up and we show some good work and they just come out of everywhere.
Thanks for that, Chelton. Zita, I think you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
No, just a contribution to that question. And I think that hopefully this is a start to some of that archiving. Happily, we've recorded this webinar today and we can share it. And this is part of the objective of Healthy Watersheds, is to start this kind of peer learning network in advancing the work. And I do think that I just wanted to flag as well that there is a restoration certificate at BCIT and at UVic that are, they are still doing this work. There's, I don't know how many people they're cranking out, but we've certainly seen some of them employed through the Healthy Watersheds Initiative. But there is a dearth of expertise for sure and training. So I know that we're going to work hard through Watersheds BC and the ongoing work of the Indigenous Watersheds Initiative to keep the learning piece alive, and hopefully that will support this moving forward.
Thanks, Zita. As we're starting to wrap up, I would love to hear from Cindy and Emily and Lara one more time. And the question that I have for you three is what's the most rewarding part of this work for you? Whoever would like to jump in.
I'll go first. If that's okay. Something has been forefront of my mind here. I would say that it's the relationship building. It's the connections with the landholders, with the nations, the field crews. I mean, it's a huge part of what Foodlands as a program is all about. It's about creating this ethical space for engagement and being able to bring people on to who wouldn't ordinarily meet, right, and get together. And I think it's a really, really important part to make collaboration work effectively, is being able to have some honest, authentic, real conversations, hearing varying perspectives, and being able to listen and hear in the right ways so that we can actually work together in a very effective and meaningful way. So that for me is probably the biggest. We have just met some incredible people, and just mindsets have completely changed from beginning to end of the project. So
yeah, I will echo that. It's been so great to have the opportunity to learn from multiple different people through this process. And when I started on with Foodlands, I was a recent grad, and being able to put some of these concepts and methods that I learned in class for restoration in actual practice was so great. And we're still learning, and having these spaces like this webinar to be able to learn from each other is amazing. And then also the effectiveness monitoring and being involved in that, and being able to see that juvenile coho are using the off-channel habitat that we created and restored has been very rewarding. And being able to see the excitement of all of our collaborators and partners and share that with everybody has been so great.
Yeah, just what they said. I think the coolest thing has been the diversity of sort of people, whatever stereotypes you want to name, the diversity of people that came together around this project, people that you might not expect to care about, you know, riparian restoration or fish habitat, those kinds of things, and realizing that no, they actually do really care. It's not just because it's their land, but because they really do care about this, and because it's their land. And just seeing them sort of being the forefront, being the people on the ground, being able to use their skills with, you know, driving an excavator and knowing how to pound a post in and all of those kinds of things. All of a sudden, their skills that they may use for something completely different are being used for this win-win-win situation. And it was just really, really cool to see people in my community just feeling really well heard. Well, I don't want to say utilized, but you know what I'm saying? Like their skills were appreciated and respected and used. And I just think that was really exciting. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Ian and Chelton, same question to you. We're running out of time, so if you could answer in a minute or less, that would be amazing.
Ian, you go first. You're on mute, though.
Well, I think, you know, the thing that when I wrote the proposal to HWI for, you know, $540,000, I'm thinking, yeah, we can probably do this. And then, you know, at the end of 2021 and just looking back at how we spent the money, it just, I just had a grin on my face, like just, I couldn't stop. It's, you know, I've been a regulator for 25 years here in Smithers, working for the Ministry of Environment, and 1 in 10 things I worked on actually turned out. You know, that's my world as a government employee. Whereas this one, you know, I'm hooked. I truly am, and you know, I realize, well, I'm hoping they'll let me do this until they put me in a home, because it's such rewarding work, just seeing what you can do in a, you know, in a process-based way, in a low-tech way.
Thanks, Ian. So I'll echo everything that everyone else said. However, the thing that kind of sticks the most out for me, and it's actually, it started in the reporting process, because we got asked some really, really hard questions. And, you know, here I'm working with fish technicians all the time, but, you know, how do you get the message into leadership and in the First Nation communities? We're making those connections. So, you know, by being asked that question and then being like, geez, I haven't really done that, and then forcing myself to do it, you know, it's been the most remarkably rewarding experience I've ever had. Then, you know, folks like Lara and Emily come out to my site. Some of the things they said stuck with me. You know, it's just like, you know, it's different perspectives, and then, you know, bringing that. So, you know, just the enrichment of the relationship with you know, with local First Nations, and like the strengthening of the partnership, like it's growing organically in every sense, and it keeps growing. Yeah, but you know, it's also the sharing. Like I got some good ideas out of cottonwood today, like cutting the roots. You know, it's kind of smart, like, because lots of times all we've got is like mature cottonwood. We got no recruitment anywhere in that floodplain. You know, maybe because it's been grazed or whatever, or the process has been changed. So it's like, you make me think about new things all the time. So that, like, yeah.
Well, that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much to all of our speakers. And it was, I wish we had more time, and I know everyone on the call does too. I'm going to hand it over to Leanne Sexsmith to say a few words. Leanne, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. It is always incredibly important and really great to hear firsthand from project teams who really have done incredible heavy lifting on the ground in community. We're so grateful to all the panelists and to all of you on HWI teams for being so generous in sharing your approaches and learnings today and really throughout HWI. I know some of those reporting questions were challenging, and we're really trying to honor the insights that you've shared. And as we've heard today, supporting healthy watersheds requires that we understand what's going on in the watersheds, and the commitments and talents of the project teams in building that understanding and in doing the work has been remarkable. These are dynamic systems that do require CPR. After years of pressures and cumulative effects. And they also require ongoing monitoring, evaluation, and management over the long term. It's challenging work, but doing it connected to community through meaningful partnerships and relationships is obviously key. And your work is inspiring really important approaches forward for the future. And it's work that does need resourcing, archiving, and if not cloning, then perhaps more peer learning and access to training and certificates. And so with the upcoming release of HWI's Major Outcomes Report, we hope to honor your work and insights and really do what we can to inspire those future commitments to water security work. And we're really excited to be able to celebrate and share those outcomes as broadly as we can with community, government, and First Nations leadership. So looking forward to that. We are hoping to have the final outcomes report released next week. You'll be hearing more from us on that, and also hope to do more of this incredible sharing at the February symposium. So really hope you can all send people from your teams to celebrate and learn from the work at that event. And I also just want to say how thankful I am to our wonderful HWI team at REFBC and Watersheds BC, and to you, Claire, for facilitating, and Zita for your leadership too. So enormous thanks to all of you.
Thanks, Leanne. And I'll give the last word over to Zita before letting everyone go about their day.
Not much to say after that, those wonderful words from Leanne, but again, I just want to extend my thanks, and I learned so much as well, and I'm so grateful for those really succinct keys to success from all of the teams. And also that, you know, people are at the center of us achieving watershed security, and we both responsible for where we don't have it, but also a key part of moving forward. And so your, I think everybody's messages about how heart-centered some of this work is in connecting with other people and our ecosystems is so important to hold with us. My heart is very full at seeing these results and of hearing about just the collaboration and cooperation, and a good reminder that we need each other to achieve these results. And so I hope we can continue to support each other on this journey. And there is another webinar coming up, and you'll get a message. I think it's on the HWI website. Cheyenne can confirm that. It's in the new year, and it's about storytelling, and it's a really brilliant, it'll be a brilliant session with an artist that that Cheyenne's been working with, and the rest of the HWI team at REFBC has been working really closely with. So with that, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing, and the pictures are worth thousands of words. So I'm glad we could look at some of those today.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.